Secrets have a way of tugging at the sleeve until you look. That night, the unknown number stopped being background noise and started feeling like a choice. Ask him about October, it insisted, like a hand on my shoulder steering me toward a locked door. Bill's lamp made halos of dust. His mouth hovered near truths we'd sworn to keep polite. If I asked, I could ruin our easy. If I didn't, I could ruin us anyway. The weekend boyfriend plan was a raft. October was the river underneath. I could feel the current take hold as he smiled back. His forehead was still barely touching mine when I heard my phone tremble again in my pocket. The sound felt indecent in the hush. Bill's breath grazed my upper lip, a small weather system I could have lived inside. Ask him about October, the text would read if I looked. I knew it like an ache-nose rain. The question rose anyway, pushing at my teeth. What happened in October? I asked, and the space between us snapped like a thread. Bill stepped back. His hand went to the wall, missed the light switch, found the doorframe instead. He said, "Michael," like he was introducing me to a stranger. "Nothing. I mean, work. A flu." The practiced lie creaked. I watched his eyes find the sketches on the wall as if a boat could save a drowning man from water. My phone insisted on being touched. I pulled it out, and we both watched it like a pet we couldn't control. Unknown number. We should talk. Tonight. My gut knew the shape of cruelty, but it also knew worry. "I think Ethan texted me," I said, and the air rearranged, the corners of the room pulled farther away. "Answer it," Bill said, not meeting me. His knuckles went chalk white on the doorframe. His courage tried to be generous. I stepped into the hallway and slid my thumb across the screen. "Hello?" For a heartbeat, only static. Then a voice I recognized from the one time we'd met at a gallery opening. Honeyed, precise, a blade smiling. "Michael, it's Ethan. Sorry to bother you. I guessed Bill's too proud to tell you about October." I let silence keep me polite. He stepped in. He asked me to marry him. He'd planned a trip, ring and everything. It ended badly. "What do you want from me?" I asked, a soft knife. "Nothing," he said lightly. "Just, if he drags you into a performance?" "No, the last act he wrote I refused to play. I'm happy now. I hope he will be." He hung up before I could attach any truth to his words. I stood in the hall listening to my own breath, the elevator's mechanical sigh, a dog barking 2 floors down. When I went back in, Bill had turned off the lamp, as if darkness could make him less visible. I put the phone on the table between us. "He asked you to call?" I said. Bill flinched. He likes to curate the gallery of himself. His voice was low, rough. October was a mistake I kept trying to turn into a lesson. I planned this weekend on the coast, the restaurant where we first fought about oysters, a walk along the jetties. I bought a ring that made my palms sweat. When I asked, he laughed. Not cruel exactly, but surgical. He said I loved ideas, not him. He said I was practicing permanence on a person. I drove until the ocean surrendered and still couldn't stop. I sat with the pieces of him he'd put on the table. "You don't owe me the neat version," I said. He looked up, surprised into something tender. "I owe you the true one," he said. I asked because I wanted to believe I could be chosen, back. Not by him specifically, by someone who knows the worst weather of me. He exhaled. "So I asked the wrong person, and then I asked you for a performance." I moved closer, until our knees touched again. "Maybe we can write something else," I said. My phone buzzed. A photo of a ring in a blue box. On the drive to the lake house, the ring rode shotgun without a seatbelt. Blue box hidden in the glove compartment, rattling each time the road stitched another bend. Bill said he forgot it was there. Maybe he did. Maybe forgetting is a way of holding. The unknown number had gone quiet like a storm that changes its mind. Ahead, his family waited with casseroles and questions. Somewhere behind us, the version of us that didn't cross this line kept waving. I touched the box once, felt the gravity of regret. By sunset, we'd be smiling for people who believed us. We drove past fields that looked like they'd been combed by careful hands, the highway loosening into a two-lane ribbon. Bill's window was cracked, cold air negotiated with the heater. He drummed the steering wheel in sync with a song we both pretended not to recognize. The glove compartment clicked when we hit a pothole, an uninvited heartbeat. I glanced. He did too. I meant to return it, he said finally, words tossed casually out the window as if the wind could keep them. Then I thought I'd sell it. Then I didn't. Maybe you don't have to decide yet, I said. He nodded like someone being offered a seat in a crowded bus. Boundaries, he said, as if a spell. No using you to punish him. No using this to audition for my family's approval. We can leave at any time. And no lying to each other, I added. Except for the necessary lies, he said, mouth skewed. Let's make those as small as possible, I said, and he smiled like I'd given him permission to breathe. The lake house rose from the trees like a secret that had given itself away. Cedar, wide porch, wind chimes translating the weather into music. His sister Lena came barreling out, all silk kimono and bare feet, hair pinned with panic and love. She launched at Bill, then folded me into a hug that felt like conscription. You must be Michael, she said into my shoulder. Please, be as wonderful as Bill says you are. I'm trying to meet the marketing, I said, and she laughed and dragged us in. The house was a museum of family stories, framed paper programs from school plays, a signed baseball with a smudge where a signature used to be, a wall of kids in life jackets grinning around popsicles. Aunt Nora materialized in a cloud of perfume, soft armor, and sharper opinions. Oh, the boyfriend, she declared, holding my face like an artifact. You're prettier than the last one. The last one hung in the air like a chandelier. Pretty and punctual, I said, because armor can be wit if you do it gently. Deadly combo. Bill's mother, Helen, approached with a casserole and a careful smile. She looked like a woman who ironed answers before she asked questions. I'm glad you're here, she said, handing me the dish as if it were a test. Bill needs someone who understands him. I'm working on the manual, I said. In the kitchen, I chopped cucumbers because it looked useful. Lena hovered. Conspiratorial. He looks lighter, she said, meaning Bill. You're good for him. She glanced toward the living room where Helen had already started laying stories like placemats. Ethan dropped off flowers earlier, she added, grimacing. With his friend, Julian. He said they booked a room in town. I told Mom not to make a thing of it. I rinsed my hands and let the cold water anchor me. We're not making a thing of anything, I said, and tried to believe it. Our guest room had one bed. Of course it did. The quilt was a patchwork of outgrown shirts. The window framed the lake the way a gallery frames a painting you can't afford. Bill put our bags down and surveyed the bedding like it might reveal instructions. I can sleep? On the floor, he said, and the gallantry made my chest ache. Don't be ridiculous, I said. We've practiced. He turned, eyebrows up, gratitude and fear arguing behind his eyes. Right, he said. He sat on the edge of the mattress and patted the space beside him like we were coaxing a shy animal out of the woods. I sat. Our shoulders aligned, a familiar key clicking into a door. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. I wanted to, I said, and the truth was an unclenched fist. We wandered down to the dock before dinner, a childhood boardwalk of splinters and dares. The lake held the sky tenderly. Bill's hand found mine, and we let the gesture be practical. Balance, warmth, performance, because naming it wouldn't make it more true. Behind us, the porch light blinked awake. Headlights swung across the trees and drew a silver path over the water. A car door slammed, then another. Voices rose in that careful register adults use when they don't want to startle anyone. Ethan's laugh found us first, expensive, practiced. He came into view with a man whose posture announced competence. Julian held a bakery box like a peace offering. Bill, Ethan said, and the name sounded rehearsed on his tongue. Michael. He smiled at me like we shared a secret I hadn't agreed to keep. Hi, I said, summoning polite weather. Julian stuck out a hand. Good to finally meet you, he said, meaning me, meaning the ghost I'd been in their story. His grip was firm and kind. I liked him, which felt like betrayal to the plot and loyalty to myself. Helen called from the porch, voice bright, too bright. Ethan brought lemon tarts. As if dessert could fix time. Bill's fingers tightened around mine. In his other pocket, his knuckles made a small mountain. The outline of the ring pressed faintly through the fabric, a quiet planet with its own orbit. People think the hard part of pretending is the kiss, it's the toast. Under the fairy lights, with your ribs too small for your heart, your ex at the far end, your best friend's hand in yours, the ring a galaxy in his pocket, you plan to smile and keep breathing. Then his mother asks you to speak. You do. You tell a truth that isn't allowed, and every fork pauses mid-air. Afterward, the dock is a confession booth. Bill says, "Should I keep the ring?" The lake keeps its own counsel, black and bottomless, while my mouth chooses weather. The welcome dinner bled gold across the lawn. Strings of bulbs made constellations out of fence posts, and the long table was a geography of potato salad, sweating wine glasses, and inherited silver. Lena glowed like a lit match. Bill sat beside me, knee aligned with mine, hand occasionally, checking my wrist like a pulse. Across the table, Ethan arranged his smile the way you'd set a centerpiece, careful, visible. Julian listened more than he spoke, which I respected. His kindness folded neatly. Aunt Nora opened the toasts by congratulating Lena and also somehow scolding her for not doing it sooner. Laughter rolled. Knives slid through steak. Ethan stood, clinked his glass. "To Lena," he said, eyes glittering, "for finding someone who loves the real you, not the idea of you." His gaze skimmed past us like a stone skipping water. My jaw worked. Bill's hand tightened around mine under the table. "Ignore him," he breathed. His voice cost him, and I wanted to invoice Ethan for the debt. Then Helen rose, hesitation and hope stitched together. "Before we eat cake, maybe we could hear from Michael," she said, turning the room toward me with a kind smile that asked for proof. "Since we're all meeting someone important to Bill." The table recalibrated. I stood, the lawn soft, under my shoes, and felt every story in me rummage for the right one. "To Lena," I began, "whose joy lights the room like a power outage never happened." Laughter relieved the tightness. "And to families, which are complicated on their best days." I glanced at Bill, who watched me like a man on a cliff trusting the rope. When I met Bill, he taught me that love can be architecture. You don't just feel it, you build with it, you pay attention, you reinforce what's fragile, you leave room for windows. My voice steadied. The real version of us is the one that shows up when things fall down. "Lena, I've seen Bill show up. You've got the right blueprint." Silence breathed, then applause. Lena wiped her eyes with a napkin and mouthed, "Thank you." Helen's hand found her heart. Aunt Nora said, "Well said," like she was surprised. Ethan smiled with all his teeth. "What a performance," he murmured, when I sat. Julian shifted, discomfort skimming his face. His elbow nudged Ethan with a quiet request to behave. Bill's fingers pressed gratitude into my palm. "Thank you," he said, and his eyes were wet, which felt like being looked at by weather. After dessert, I volunteered for dish duty and hid in steam. Helen joined me with a towel, the pattern worn soft by years. "He is lighter around you," she said, not looking directly. "Sometimes my son performs happiness so well, I'm afraid I won't notice when it hurts." Her confession startled me by its honesty. "I'll notice," I said, "and I'll tell him when I do." She nodded, relief untying a knot in her mouth. "Good." When the kitchen quieted, Bill appeared with 2 jackets and a grin that belonged to before. "Walk?" We slipped to the dock, away from the hum of voices, the lake a patient ear. The boards creaked the way they always had. "I thought you were joking when you offered me this," I said into the dark. "And I loved it." The admission left me shivering and braver. I wasn't joking, he said. I was terrified. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the blue box. It gathered the scant light and made it important. I brought it because I didn't know what it meant anymore. Trophy? Warning? Gravity? My phone vibrated, once, insistent. Unknown number. He kept it to remind himself he fails at choosing. The gall in Ethan's insinuation fizzed under my skin. I silenced the phone and held up my hand. Don't let him narrate your objects, I said. Or your choices. Bill looked at me, not the water, and something calibrating happened behind his eyes. Okay, he said, almost to himself. He opened the box. The ring caught a stray star and made a promise to light. If I keep it, it's because I decide it can be melted into something new. If I let it go, it's because I want to stop carrying a coastline I can't live on. Wind stitched the hair at his temple into an untidy crown. I wanted to touch it. I didn't. What do you want? I asked, the question bigger than the ring. He stepped closer until our coats brushed. I want to stop practicing, he said. I want the thing, not the rehearsal. We hovered there, breath shared, a handshake from a kiss. The ring sat between us like a moon choosing tides. Bill drew his arm back, eyes on mine, and the lake opened its mouth. Everything waited in the space between his hand and the water, the ring, the past, the part of me that wanted to call this fate. Bill drew his arm back and the lake opened its mouth. My phone thrummed with one message that felt like an omen. I thought I knew what he'd choose by the sound his breath made. Then he looked at me. Not the water, not the sky, and the decision changed shape. Maybe love isn't a leap, but the moment you stop rehearsing the fall. He wasn't joking. Neither was I. The ring glittered like breath kept. Don't, I said, soft but anchored. His arm stilled. A small wind rearranged our coats. We watched each other in the hush, the lake listening like a neighbor pressed to the wall. Bill exhaled. The arc of the throw collapsed into his chest. He closed the box, as if he were tucking a child in, and slipped it back into his pocket. A choice, not a reflex. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't let him turn you into a rehearsal. I pictured Ethan at the edge of the lawn, thumb mean with certainty. I blocked the number, the way you shut a window before a storm you're done, honoring. Bill saw the motion and nodded, a flicker of relief. I'm sorry I dragged you into his echoes, he said. You brought me to your life, I said. Echoes included. I took his hand. We can make our own sound. He laughed then, quiet and bright, and it unraveled something knotted in me. I want to try for real, he said. No script, no audience. If you want me. I've wanted you since before we had language for it, I said, and everything stopped pretending. Our first real kiss was clumsy and perfect, a collision that found its shape as it happened. It tasted like lake air and relief. His hand came up to cup my jaw, careful, like I was a bell he was learning how to ring. I felt my life reach forward to meet me. Footsteps creaked on the dock. We broke apart, not guilty so much as startled, to be seen. Julian stood at the foot of the boards, hands in jacket pockets, gaze gentle. Sorry, he said. Not my business. Ethan thought you'd throw it. He wanted to watch. He doesn't get to watch anymore, Bill said, voice calm as a good shore. Julian nodded. He's a curator of other people's moments. I'm trying to teach him how to be inside them. He looked at us with something like solidarity. For what it's worth, I think you look like the real kind. Thank you, I said, meaning it. He tipped a small salute and went back to the lighted lawn. When we followed, Helen was waiting on the steps, arms folded against the cold, eyes bright with mother worry and mother love. She took in our faces and smiled, quiet and sure. You chose something, she said. We did, Bill said. Good, she replied, as if she'd been holding a breath for a long time. Eat a piece of cake, then sleep. Tomorrow is long. Inside, Aunt Nora side-eyed our clasped hands and whispered, "About time," to no one in particular. Lena kissed our cheeks and slipped a lipstick-stained napkin into my pocket like a blessing. Ethan lingered by the drinks, jaw grinding. Julian touched his elbow, and I heard him say, "Let it go," the way you tell a dog to drop the stick. Ethan looked at Bill with a kind of baffled resentment, then looked away. He didn't approach. The unknown number stayed blocked, finally silent. In our room, the quilt lifted into a small tent when we slid beneath it, childhood and future sharing a roof. We lay on our backs like kids at a sleepover, fingers laced between us, staring at the pale rectangle of window where the lake kept making moonlight. "What do we do with the ring?" he asked, a smile in the dark. "Melt it," I said. "Make something new. Not a promise we tried to give the wrong person, a pendant, or a small band we both wear because we chose it together." "Okay," he said, voice a contented exhale. "Together." Morning arrived smelling like coffee and grass. We moved through the wedding day in the easy choreography of people who have decided. When cameras turned, we didn't pose so much as exist. I saw it in the photos later. How being in love makes you look unafraid of your own face. At the send-off, sparklers hissed. Lena cried without apology. Bill squeezed my hand, then pulled me into the mess of family and light. His mother kissed our cheeks. Aunt Nora sniffed and told us not to be idiots. Even Ethan managed a nod that wasn't a weapon. On the drive home, the glove compartment didn't rattle. The ring was in my pocket, warm from my skin. Bill glanced over, something like wonder loosening his mouth. "I thought you were joking when you offered me this," I said, smiling at the road. "And I loved it." "I wasn't," he said. "I'm not." I laced our fingers over the console. The river ran alongside for a while, then turned away, patient as ever. We didn't rush it. We didn't perform. We drove toward a life we hadn't practiced for and didn't need to. Bill's offer sounded like the setup to one of his pranks. Be my boyfriend for a weekend, charm my impossible family, smile for photographs that might outlive us. I laughed, because that's what I do when the ground under me shifts. I make a joke and hope the world laughs back. But his knuckles were white around the coffee cup, and there's nothing funny about fear in someone you love. The thing is, I trained myself to love Bill quietly. Accepting meant breaking every safeguard I'd built. It also meant I might find out what he was too afraid to say. Bill chose the window booth at Mercy's, the diner that smells like cinnamon, and old promises. A storm hovered over the river, bruising the sky, and his reflection looked like a ghost pressed against the glass. I was late, which he would tease me for, except he didn't look like a man with teasing left in him. He did. That half-stand he always does when I arrive, a gentleman disguised as a giddy Labrador. "Michael," he said, and the surface of my name trembled in his mouth. He sat back down as if the vinyl was the only thing keeping him upright. "You okay?" I slid into the booth opposite, flicking raindrops off my jacket. "You look like you just saw the check for brunch in Manhattan." He huffed, but his eyes didn't smile. "My sister is getting married. Lake house end of the month." He swallowed. "I need a boyfriend for the weekend. If this were any other day, I would have," volleyed the joke back, served with a side of sarcasm. I opened my mouth, then saw the careful way he set his palms against the table, as if bracing for turbulence. The joke died. "You want me to be your—" "Fake," he said. "Temporary. Rehearsal dinner, ceremony, photos, Sunday brunch. We'd have a backstory. Rules. Clear exits." He rushed, words stacking up like dominoes. "My family wouldn't pester me, and Ethan would stop." He bit the name back as if he'd already said too much. The diner hummed around us. Coffee poured, plates clinked, rain typing messages on the windows. I stared at my best friend, at the stubble he'd missed shaving, at his jaw, at the ink smudge on his wrist from whatever he'd been sketching earlier. We were 29 and 31, respectively. We had 16 years of shared jokes and catastrophes. We had one nearly kiss in a dorm hallway that neither of us had ever unpacked. "You think I can pull off being your boyfriend?" I managed, aiming for lightness and landing somewhere near breathless. His mouth quirked, brave. "I think you already do without the benefits." I laughed, and it felt like stepping onto a bridge that might or might not hold. "What benefits?" Color rose in his cheeks. He pushed a paper napkin toward my fidgeting hands. "I'll pay for the tux. I'll handle the travel. You just have to show up and, be you. Good at people. Good with chaos." "What aren't you telling me?" I asked. My voice traitorously soft. He stared at the storm. "Ethan's gonna be there. With someone new." He cleared his throat. "It shouldn't matter. It does. I don't want to look like I lost." There it was. The white-knuckled coffee, cup the dread. The part of me that hoards caution wanted to say we'd both regret this. The larger, louder part wanted to run toward whatever this was with both arms open. "I'm your man," I said, and surprised myself with how true it sounded. Bill's relief cracked into a smile, the kind you fall into. He reached across the table impulsively, squeezed my hand. Heat traveled the length of my arm and made a home in my chest. "Okay," he said. "Tonight, my place. We'll draft our backstory. Practice. If we're going to convince Aunt Nora, we have to convince each other first." "Practice," I repeated. The word was a doorway. He let go. I wanted him not to. When the check came, I snapped a photo of him fencing the receipt. Outside, my phone buzzed. "Unknown number. We should talk about Bill tonight. Soon." Practice shouldn't feel like falling, but it did. Bill's living room was a soft trap. Lamplight, record hiss, Afghan his grandmother crocheted. And the script he wanted us to learn had more to do with touch than words. We set rules. We tried not to look like we were writing them around a cliff. My phone kept buzzing with the unknown number. Ask him about October. Decide tonight. If we were pretending, why did my ribs feel too narrow for my heart? I thought I was good at playing along. With Bill, the stage was real, and the spotlight made honesty sweat. Bill's building smells like turmeric and thrift store paperbacks, a hallway of cooked dinners and second chances. He opens before I knock twice, hair damp, t-shirt soft with age. Behind him, lamplight spills across sketches taped to the wall. Boats, hands, the precise curve of the river bridge where we used to dare each other to spit and count. Comfort rises like steam from a kettle. "I brought takeout," I say, lifting the bag, "to fuel the deception." "You know how to woo a man," he says, but the joke sits gently. He leads me in, toes bumping mine at the threshold as if testing. Currents. On the coffee table, a legal pad waits, colonized by bullet points. Backstory. Boundaries. Family landmines. His handwriting leans ambitious cliffs. "We start with truth," he says. "We met sophomore year. You pretended to hate my music. I pretended not to notice you learning every lyric." "I did hate your music," I say, taking the couch corner. "But I liked your face." He grins, relief turning his mouth younger. We settle. It becomes a game only because games are safer than prayer. We build the scaffolding of two men who finally got brave. First kiss under the pedestrian overpass. After a thunderstorm, my hands cold, his warm, the smell of wet concrete like a stampede. Inside the lie is a room I recognize. My phone trembles. Unknown number. Decide tonight. I flip it face down. Bill watches the motion, curiosity flickering, then lets it pass. Boundaries, he says, tapping the pad. No making you the target. For Aunt Nora's marriage advice. No letting my mother compare you to Ethan. We leave when you need to. I own my mess. What about touch? I ask, trying to make it an administrative item and not a tremor. He swallows. We should practice, right? For photos, for believability. He's inches away without moving. He's the line I've always pretended not to see. I scoot closer until our knees consider each other. His exhale is a confession. He offers his hand like a treaty. I take it. The heat is almost audible. Fingers interlace. The world narrows to skin printing memory into skin. Okay, he says, voice thinner. Shoulder, arm around you, hug. We try them all. Shoulder to shoulder, we fit like a sentence finally finding its verb. His arm settles along my spine. I feel rated, found acceptable. When he pulls me into a hug, my mouth nearly brushes his. Neck. Taste arrives as scent, and I am 13 again, discovering hunger has texture. Photos, he says, retreating into purpose. He grabs his phone, sets the timer, breathes out. We lean into each other. Flash. The screen captures us softer. Then I remembered. It's disarming to witness how possible we look. My phone rattles again. Unknown number. Ask him about October. I stand to throw away cartons, giving my face discipline. In October, Bill stopped answering for 3 days, then claimed flu, then showed up with eyes that had learned a new alphabet for tired. I never asked. Friendship can be a hedge around questions that scare off birds. Michael, he says, I'm here. I return to the couch. Tell me about your sister. Landmines. He talks. I listen. I memorize. When he falls quiet, we try silence, a skill most couples never practice. We pass. Before I leave, he walks me to the door and doesn't open it. We stand in that small square where goodbye rearranges everything. His forehead brushes mine, tentative. From table, timer light blinks. In my pocket, the unknown number hums. Decide tonight.